Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love bold and beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in.
Luna Nozawa, formerly a bright young designer at Forrester Creations, is now a despondent individual confined behind the restrictive confines of her cell. Her hands quivered as she clutched her abdomen, terror and bewilderment engulfing her. The formerly vivacious young woman who had captivated R.J. Forrester and garnered the esteem of the Forrester family was now a mere shadow of her former self, her once luminous eyes now clouded with sorrow and remorse. The announcement of her pregnancy had unsettled everyone in Los Angeles, particularly following the startling disclosure that Will Spencer, rather than R.J. Forrester, was the father. The scandal had fractured families, terminated friendships, and left the whole Forrester and Spencer community in a state of shock. As Luna awaited judgment, the emotional and physical burden became unbearable, culminating in a profound tragedy. Earlier that morning, Deputy Chief Bradley Baker visited the facility for an update. He remained unsettled by how the young woman's decisions had resulted in such turmoil. "She is no longer the same girl we admitted," one of the guards remarked softly as Baker completed the daily report. "She is delicate." Baker exhaled, reminiscing about the formerly vibrant and turn brimming with vitality. Her decline was rapid, the deceit, the fabrications, and the eventual repercussions of her conduct culminating in her apprehension. However, he had not anticipated the events of that day, the incident that would reverberate throughout Los Angeles. Luna, attempting to evade a fight with another inmate, lost her footing on the damp concrete floor of the laundry area, colliding forcefully with a metal table. The ensuing shriek silenced the entire block. Blood, agony, terror. The guards entered hastily, and within moments, alarms sounded throughout the complex. Luna collapsed, grasping her abdomen, her cries resonating with fear and anguish. Luna Nozawa and Elektra confronted each other in a standoff that had been years in the making, with the looming shadow of Will's involvement between them. Luna, trembling but defiant, clutched at her burgeoning belly and tried one last desperate gambit, pleading that she was carrying the next Spencer heir, that this baby was innocent and deserved protection. Her words fell on deaf ears as Elektra, with a glint of vindictive triumph in her eyes, sang out with mock cheer, "You are going to prison. Thanks to me. And don't you forget it." And it was clear from the way she flicked her hand toward Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, who had grown impatient after months of Luna's manipulations, that the moment of reckoning had arrived, and Baker, standing tall and authoritative, barked the words Luna had feared all her scheming days. "Luna Nozawa, you are under arrest." Words that landed like thunderclaps as Luna's protests about grandchild innocence and emotional appeals for leniency evaporated into the cold air of inevitability. She wailed, accusing Elektra of being scared that Will would ever love her and their child, refusing to go quietly back to prison, and begged, implored, practically on her knees, for Bill and Katie to let her remain under their roof at least until the baby's arrival, even turning to Will with a desperate hope that he would intervene, though anyone who looked at him could see the impossibility, as Elektra leaned in with a sharp, mocking smile and declared, "Let's lock up Luna. For good." Her voice slicing through the tension, leaving Luna's pleas echoing unheeded in the grand rooms of the Spencer estate, a chilling foreshadowing of the battles that were to come once she was physically removed from the world she had tried to manipulate, and the scene shifted seamlessly across town to Brooke's home, where Bridget, Finn, Taylor and Ridge were gathered, their faces etched with anxiety as they pored over the news of Luna's arrest, and debated the implications for Will, who seemed to all eyes shackled in a metaphorical sense to a woman whose schemes had nearly destroyed his emotional stability, with Finn and Bridget reassuring that the paternity test results were accurate, Taylor shaking her head at the cruel irony that Luna's machinations had, in some twisted sense, succeeded, and Ridge warning Finn of the slippery persistence of Luna's character, predicting that she would attempt, sooner or later, to worm back into his life despite her incarceration, while Finn, trying to balance the scales of justice and compassion, insisted he wanted accountability for Luna but also understood Will's torment, all the while acknowledging that his first responsibility was ensuring Steffi's safety, and that meant keeping Luna behind bars, regardless of the unborn child, a point Ridge emphasized with grim certainty, knowing that any leniency might open the door to further chaos. Meanwhile, across town at Il Giardino, the atmosphere was suffused with a different kind of tension as Deacon embraced his son Deke and promised to avoid the playful nickname that once defined their bond, signaling a sobering shift in his demeanor as he began to process the revelation that Sheila, the woman he had once thought transformed, had kept Luna's survival hidden for so long, and the conversation naturally veered into the turbulence of his own romantic life, the fractures and secrets that seemed to define it, as Deacon admitted he had moved out of his marital home, grappling with the duplicity that had marred so much of his personal relationships, and when Deke pressed him, coaxing him gently to reflect, Deacon confessed the raw embarrassment and humiliation of having been misled, admitting that the fallout from Sheila's deceptions had upended countless lives, not least his own, and Deke, perceptive and empathetic, pivoted the dialogue toward hope, noting how she seemed to have found her footing again, thriving with her fashion line, while Deacon observed, with a mixture of envy and relief, that the broken engagement with Carter had been for the best, the conversation looping back inexorably to Sheila and the unsettling realization that the woman who had once claimed redemption might still harbor dangerous secrets. The narrative then transitioned back to Brooke's residence, where Katie delivered the news of Luna's impending incarceration, eliciting sighs of relief from all present, though Taylor's phone buzzed insistently with a message from Deacon requesting an urgent meeting. And Ridge, always the voice of reason amidst family chaos, declared the nightmare effectively over, while Finn, checking in on Steffi via text but withholding the painful news of Luna until she returned, maintained his focus on protecting his daughter, asserting his own priorities and hoping Ridge would understand the weight of being the father of a child whose mother was a threat. The final sequences were a whirlwind of emotion and confrontation, as Deacon met Taylor in her office, admitting his vulnerability, feeling like a fool for having misjudged Sheila, and seeking guidance on navigating the treacherous waters of love, family, and personal integrity, while at Bill's estate, Will confronted Luna with unfiltered rage, accusing her of exploiting him and using their intimacy as a means to an end, rejecting her pleas that he could love her despite the betrayal, as Bill stood firm at his side, underscoring the impossibility of Luna's claims, and Luna's anguish only heightened as she realized that everyone around her, including the man who fathered her child, had turned their backs, leaving her to cry out in desperation for recognition of her maternal rights. Katie, seizing the moment with resolute determination, announced her plan to secure custody of the baby upon birth, promising that the innocent child would grow up free from Luna's influence, a declaration that drew incredulous gasps from Electra, who cried out in disbelief, and Bill, amused by Katie's unintentional reference to them as a unit, barked with authority that there would be no hindrance to their plans, further cementing Luna's defeat, while Luna, frantic and cornered, lashed out at Electra, blaming her for orchestrating the downfall that left her powerless, jealous and enraged that Will had shared intimacy with Electra, and that the child in her womb represented a life she could no longer control, and in a final flash of violence, Electra struck Luna across the face, a sharp, undeniable punctuation mark on the conflict as Luna sought desperately for Will's intervention, only to see him, steeled and resolute, direct Baker to take her away, ensuring that the legal consequences of her actions would unfold as inevitable as the turning of a clock, leaving all involved to reckon with the moral and emotional fallout of choices made, alliances broken, and futures irrevocably altered, a cascade of heartbreak, triumph and justice in the twisted, interwoven tapestry of Spencer and Forrester family drama that defined the world of Bold and the Beautiful, where each revelation, each confrontation, and each declaration set in motion a chain reaction of consequences that would ripple outward, touching every life in Los Angeles's most notorious circles of love, betrayal and power, underscoring the fragile yet unyielding tension between personal desire and ethical responsibility, a narrative that, though momentarily resolved with Luna's incarceration and the promise of her child's safety, foreshadowed further conflicts, hidden resentments, and the inexorable pull of family legacies that would ensure that no victory was ever truly final in a world where the past always had a way of colliding violently with the present, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats, hearts pounding, as they anticipated the next round of heartbreak, revelation, and drama that is the lifeblood of the Bold and the Beautiful. Bill Spencer's opulent estate. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the kind of foreboding that only years of tangled family drama and heartbreak could create. As Luna Nozawa stood in the center of the room, clutching her swollen belly as if holding it could somehow shield her from the storm that was about to crash down, while Electra, radiant in her calculated confidence, circled her like a predator savoring the moment. Every word she uttered a barb designed to wound and destabilize, and when she mocked Luna with a triumphant, "You are going to prison, thanks to me. And don't you forget it." It was a chilling reminder of the sheer vindictiveness that had fueled Electra's actions over the past months, a reminder that Luna's freedom was hanging by a thread, as Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, imposing and impatient after long months of navigating Luna's web of deception and manipulation, stepped forward with authority that brooked no argument, declaring in a voice that resonated with finality, "Luna Nozawa, you are under arrest." Words that felt like the closing of a door on a world Luna had fought to control, leaving her protests about the unborn child, the next Spencer heir, the innocent life that could not possibly pay for her transgressions, falling flat against the unyielding steel of Electra's triumph and Baker's law enforcement, as Luna, desperation rising like a tide, turned to each of the adults around her, including Bill and Katie, pleading, begging, practically on her knees, for them to allow her sanctuary until the child was born, for the faintest mercy to be extended to her, and even cast her gaze toward Will, silently imploring him to intercede, though all present knew the futility of her hope, for Will's heart was steadfast and his sense of justice unwavering, hardened by betrayal and the painful clarity of Luna's manipulations, and Electra, sensing the weakening of Luna's resolve, leaned in with predatory glee, her voice cutting like glass as she declared, "Let's lock up Luna for good." A sentence that encapsulated not only the legal ramifications but also the moral reckoning that Luna had sought to evade for so long, her manipulations, her schemes, and her illusions of control finally unraveling in the cold light of justice. Luna's protests, filled with fear, rage, and heartbreak, escalated as she accused Electra of cowardice, of fearing that Will might love her and their child, of being the instrument of her downfall, but her words met only stony silence, and Baker, running out of patience, began methodically enumerating the catalogue of crimes, each charge a hammer blow to the fragile edifice of hope Luna had built, while she cried out to Katie and Bill, insisting they allow her to remain until birth, and turned again to Will, eyes brimming with tears, begging him to intervene, hoping against hope that the father of her child could see past betrayal and scheming to the innocence she claimed still existed within her womb. But Will, resolute and firm, remained unmoved, his loyalty and moral compass guiding his actions, leaving Luna to confront the reality of her isolation, her powerlessness, and the inevitability of incarceration. Across town at Brooke's home, the scene was calmer in appearance but no less charged with tension, as Bridget and Finn joined Taylor and Ridge in deliberating the fallout, their faces a mixture of worry, disbelief, and grim determination, discussing the ramifications for Will, who, in their eyes, had been shackled not by legal constraints alone but by the emotional weight of Luna's entanglements, with Finn and Bridget assuring everyone of the accuracy of the paternity test, Taylor lamenting that Luna's scheming had, perversely, succeeded in manipulating circumstances to her advantage, and Ridge issuing a stern warning to Finn, cautioning that Luna would never abandon her attempts to worm back into their lives, that her incarceration was only a temporary barrier to her relentless drive, while Finn, attempting to balance justice and empathy, insisted that Luna must be held accountable, that her schemes had caused pain and threatened safety, and yet, despite understanding Luna's manipulations, Finn's heart ached for Will, whose life had been ensnared by Luna's machinations, and he stressed that ensuring Steffi's protection was paramount, that the child she carried could not supersede the need for legal and moral rectitude, a position Ridge reinforced with unwavering conviction, recognizing that any leniency might allow further chaos to flourish. Meanwhile, at Il Giardino, a different kind of emotional turmoil unfolded as Deacon embraced his son Deke, promising to refrain from using the nickname Little D, a small but significant gesture signaling his effort to restore some normalcy amidst the maelstrom of personal betrayals, as he reflected on his fractured marriage, confiding the pain and confusion wrought by Sheila's concealment of Luna's survival, admitting that the duplicity had left him questioning his judgment, his trust, and his own heart, while Deke, ever the empathetic son, guided the conversation toward hope, observing her renewed vigor with her fashion line and expressing relief that the broken engagement with Carter had allowed her to reclaim agency in her life. Yet the discussion inevitably returned to Sheila, the woman who had claimed redemption yet continued to harbor secrets that threatened to destabilize lives. as Deacon wrestled with conflicting feelings of love, betrayal, and the desire to believe in change, and Deke pressed, asking the inevitable question, "Now what?" Deacon, in a rare moment of vulnerability, admitted he had begun confiding in someone, a professional, in hopes of sorting his tangled emotions and clarifying the path forward, acknowledging that his love for Sheila was genuine, yet tempered by the sting of deception and the harsh lesson that trust, once broken, demanded vigilance. The narrative returned to Brooke's residence as Katie delivered news of Luna's impending arrest, bringing relief yet a sense of somber finality, though Taylor's phone buzzed with urgency, a message from Deacon seeking an immediate meeting, a reminder that while one crisis might resolve, the ripple effects of these intertwined lives continued unabated, while Ridge, ever the protector and strategist, declared the immediate nightmare over, and Finn, maintaining his watch over Steffi, texted her updates cautiously, holding back the truth of Luna's capture until she returned, reinforcing the tension between transparency and protection, a dynamic that underscored the complexity of fatherhood, loyalty, and ethical responsibility. The concluding sequences unfolded with layered intensity, as Deacon met Taylor in her office, admitting shame and embarrassment, revealing a rawness that only came from the collision of love, deceit, and self-awareness, pleading for guidance on navigating the convoluted path ahead, while back at Bill's estate, Will confronted Luna in a tempest of righteous anger, denouncing her manipulation, rejecting her claims of love, and asserting that her child was conceived not out of genuine affection but through exploitation, with Bill reinforcing the immovability of this stance, leaving Luna's pleas echoing unheeded, a testament to the moral and emotional clarity that had finally emerged after months of subterfuge. Katie, seizing the initiative, announced that she and Bill would secure custody of the unborn child, ensuring that the next Spencer heir would be raised free from the shadow of Luna's manipulations. Proclamation that drew disbelief and outrage from Elektra, who could not comprehend the shift of power, while Bill, simultaneously amused and authoritative, confirmed their capability to enforce this plan, cementing Luna's defeat, and in a final violent burst of desperation, Luna turned her rage toward Elektra, accusing her of orchestrating her downfall, jealousy and rage flaring as she confronted the reality that Will had shared intimacy with Elektra, that her child symbolized a bond she could no longer control, and in a climactic moment Elektra struck Luna across the face, a sharp punctuation to the chaos, as Luna sought Will's intervention one last time, only to witness him command Baker to execute the arrest, cementing the inevitable legal and moral consequences. The room pulsed with emotion, a microcosm of the broader world of Los Angeles high society, where loyalty, betrayal, love, and ambition collided in a combustible mix, each character forced to reckon with the outcomes of choices made, alliances broken, and futures irrevocably altered, the narrative cascading outward in waves of heartbreak, triumph, and justice, an intricate tableau of interwoven lives that reflected the enduring power and peril of familial legacy. And even as Luna was escorted away, her cries echoing against the walls of the Spencer estate, the ripple effects of her actions, the moral reckonings, and the emotional aftershocks would continue to resonate, ensuring that no one involved, Will, Steffi, Katie, Bill, Elektra, Ridge, Finn, Taylor, Deacon or Deke, would remain untouched, and that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, where love, revenge, and family ties are forever inextricably entwined, each conclusion merely sets the stage for the next conflict, the next revelation, the next devastating heartbreak that drives the lives of Los Angeles' elite into an endless cycle of drama, tension, and emotional complexity, a world where justice and retribution coexist with compassion and moral ambiguity, leaving audiences captivated, hearts racing, and minds consumed with anticipation for the next collision of fate, desire, and consequence. Bill Spencer's estate. The tension was nearly suffocating, an invisible current thrumming through every corner of the room, as Luna Nozawa, trembling yet defiant, pressed a hand to her swelling belly, trying in vain to draw strength from the life growing inside her, while simultaneously grappling with the crushing reality that the life she had fought so desperately to manipulate and claim control over was now slipping beyond her grasp, as Elektra, her eyes alight with merciless triumph, circled her with the precision and patience of a predator savoring the thrill of final victory, each carefully chosen word a blade designed to wound Luna emotionally, and as she sang her cruel mockery, "You are going to prison. Thanks to me. And don't you forget it." The room seemed to shrink, the walls echoing with the inevitability of Luna's fate, leaving her desperation exposed like a raw nerve. Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, his expression carved from stone after months of dealing with Luna's elaborate web of lies, stepped forward with measured authority, his boots clicking against the polished floor, each step reinforcing the finality of the moment, and his voice rang out like judgment itself. "Luna Nozawa, you are under arrest." A sentence that landed with the weight of inevitability, crushing Luna's protests and rendering her appeals to the unborn child moot in the eyes of law and morality, and she pivoted in frantic hope, glancing toward Bill, hoping, begging silently for some mercy, for recognition that this child, innocent, vulnerable and utterly unaware, should not bear the burden of her mistakes, but Bill's gaze was unwavering, hard yet just, his moral compass guiding him to support justice over sentimentality. And Luna's eyes found Katie, pleading for maternal empathy, but Katie's heart, though tender and protective, was resolute. Electra, sensing the faltering of Luna's resistance, leaned in, her voice sharp, precise.